Welcome to yet another live episode of Pound for Pound Box Report, episode 448. I am your host, Michael. Joining me this week, Gail, she's back. Had other obligations last week. She's back this week. Daniel had other business to attend to, family-related business to attend to, so he will not be with us this evening. Excuse me. What's going on, Gail?
Hey, it's graduation season. It's, vacation time for a lot of folks. So
That's right.
uh, you will just have to put up with the dynamic duo tonight. That's just the way it is.
That's right. Since there is graduation time, and and since it is graduation time and family is first priority, that's where Daniel is at. Congratulations to I believe his niece who's graduating. And hope he's listening. Hope he is. I think he should be listening onto the show either live or on a delayed basis. For those who are new to Pound for Pound Box Report, Pound for Pound Box Report, live YouTube show, podcast, blog, site, etc., talking all things boxing. The motto is when boxing is good, we will talk about it. When it's bad, we will talk about it. Bottom line is, if it concerns the sweet science, it will get discussed. If you want to find out any and all information, please go to the site, p4pboxreport.com. If you wish to email us with any questions, comments, suggestions, you can do so, p4pboxing at p4pboxingreport.com. On the site, you will find links to check out all things Power for Pound Box Report when it comes to social media, links to the YouTube channel, Facebook, Twitter, IG page, also where to catch the show on the podcast realm, be it Anchor, be it Spotify, be it Apple Podcasts, wherever you listen to your favorite podcast, you should be able to find Pound for Pound Box Report. If you would like to donate, it wouldn't matter if it's $1, $2, $5, whatever you would like to contribute, we will be grateful. Cash Me and PayPal donation links on the site. Last but certainly not least, for my fitness enthusiasts, uh, if you're trying to get your body right as we inch ever closer during the summer, into the summer, please check out the link to BODI, formerly known as Beachbody on Demand. Suitable programs for any suitable interest goals that you desire or interest. If you're looking for a boxing specific program, please check out 10 Rounds. That is a 6-week program, 3 days a week, 3 days of boxing based cardio, 2 days of resistance slash weight work. At the very least, they got sales going on right now for first time users. Also, if you're interested in the free trial, got a 14-day free trial, which goes throughout the year, and that is for 14 days. You get free access to any and all programs on Beach Body. Let's get things going. Gail, recapping what went down in this past weekend. Uh, let's talk about maybe not the most important fight, but the fight that had people talking the most, Gail, and that is the return of AB, Adrien the Problem Broner, fighting the always entertaining, whether the always entertaining, I'll just put it that way, Blair Cobbs. And we've always suspected that Broner doesn't have it anymore. Known for his lack of discipline and whatnot. And it was really exposed once again in this fight. He got put down in the second round with a straight left hand and literally knocked his tooth out. And for the first half, 3/4 of the fight, uh, it was all Cobbs. Broner came on a little somewhat towards the end, but ultimately Cobbs got the decision. Uh, in summary, Gail, what this fight showed to me is that just like with Deontay Wilder, after his stoppage defeat to Zhilei Zhang, I said to myself, Wilder does not need to fight anymore. He should really contemplate hanging up the gloves. I get that same sense for Broner. I mean, he's 34 now. Um, he's not going to be the fighter that we saw at 130 and 135. Let's face it, he has not been the same since Maidana beat him back, December 2013 now. Broner came out with a statement on social media saying that he's going to fight again. Um, However, when it comes to Adrien Broner ever returning to glory, quote unquote, he's cooked.
Yeah, his career, is at the highest level, at the level that he'd like to think it is done. There comes a point for every athlete, for whatever reason, as they age, they can see what they need to do, they know what they want to do, and they are not able to execute. We all feel it as we get older in our fitness journey at our own low, humble level. It happens very quickly for someone at the highest level of any professional sport. We see it right away, and especially one as demanding as boxing. You don't have to slip a lot for your performance to just crash and burn, and here we are. And it happens for different reasons at different times. Somebody can be a very old 34, right? Wilder's a little older than that. He lasted a little bit longer, but eventually his problem was taking those horrific beatings, from Tyson Fury in that trilogy. It just wiped him out. In Broner's case, it was Maidana. And what goes along with the physical punishment is the mental punishment. You've got to have an unwavering, unshakable belief in yourself and be, just have that dash of crazy on top of it. As Chris Algieri says, that all boxers are crazy, and self included. And he's right. The minute there's a crack in that mental armor, you're done. I so dislike the term washed, but I understand why it gets used, because we all understand what that means. At whatever level a fighter's performance slips off and we say that guy's washed, yeah. Broner, Wilder, Charlo 1, Charlo 2, both of them. Andrade, yeah, we got a lot of guys who are just they've hit that place. Cobbs was well prepared, and I will give Broner this. It appeared, at least, that he had trained. He made weight. He didn't look terribly out of shape, but he just does not have all the tools it takes to be good. And Cobbs definitely came in ready to do business. He performed probably at the highest level we see from him. His ceiling isn't super high, but credit to him. He did what he needed to do. The early knockdown just took whatever piss and vinegar was still left out of Adrien Broner, and that was it. He made it to the end on his feet, but that's about all you can say for it. He should not fight on, but he will. He will, and he's still got name value on someone's resume who's on the way up. I beat Adrien Broner, and whether we like it or not, he still draws attention. He still gets a lot of eyes on him. He's still saying crazy, outrageous things. Sometimes they're just plain wild. Other times, he could still be entertaining. He probably needs the money. And he has said himself many times over the last few years, particularly, as Tyson Fury has and others have, that his mental health is better when he's in the gym training and stays busy. He might keep boxing for that reason alone, but the big paydays, the big main event fights are a thing of the past in his scrapbook. That's it. Because the welterweight division is so wide open right now, because, Bud Crawford's going to drop all those belts. There aren't a lot of other guys to take him on. Not that he'd want to. He's going to move up. So they're going to be belts available, and not all that many guys, they're ready to compete for them. So Cobbs has put himself in position to probably get a title shot off of this fight. I think it's going to be a steep hill for him, but his life has been very improbable. If you know his life story, he's beaten the odds more than once. He's only had one loss. He's had a couple of pretty good, surprising wins. It'll be interesting to see where he goes. And hey, maybe when it's all said and done, it was the Broner puppet that did it. Possible.
Excuse me. For those who don't know what I'm referring to, Cobbs during the pre-fight bum rushed Broner's camp where he was training and came in tow with a Broner puppet, as he was trolling him while Broner was in the gym shadow boxing.
He brought it to the news conference the week of the fight and had the puppet in front of him up on the stage, mimicking everything Broner said. It was hilarious. I mean, you just couldn't help but laugh. It was so damn goofy. But what's he going to do with the puppet now? Give it to Adrien? Give it to his kids? Who knows?
I mean, here's the thing. Here's the bottom line. Broner is a case of wasted talent, right? As he ascended up the boxing ranks, he got popular, he got attention, he got fame, he got money. And what's the saying is, when you get money, all your flaws before you had money are heightened or enhanced. The lack of discipline, the odd erratic behavior, the fact that he couldn't keep his weight down, the fact that he has serious problems with alcohol, all that just came to the surface, and he couldn't channel his energy, channel his emotions to be the best fighter that he could be, to live the fighter's life. And it's caught up with him physically and mentally. And when you can't, and no disrespect to Blair Cobbs, but he's a C-level fighter. We want to be honest here. If you can't beat the likes of him at this point of your career, what prospects do you really have going forward? So that's why I say it's time for him to hang it up. It's time for him to call it a day. In terms of Cobbs, look, say what you want. He got the win. He got the fans' attention, and at least it got him a few more fights. Where he will go from here, who knows? But at the very least, he's entertaining outside the ring as much as inside the ring, and we will see him again. He will see him again. Not just because of what he does in the ring, because his mouth is one of the best trash talkers in the sport. No doubt about it, to Gail's earlier point. Let's move on to some other fights here. Oscar Collazo, one of the better fighters in the lower weight division, WBO champion at 105. Fought a guy by the name of Zapata, won by unanimous decision. Pretty much had his way, Gail. But for the first time in my watching him, he had some moments. He has some worrisome moments as he got clocked in the second round. Was really, really wobbly. To his credit, he did everything to stay up in that second round, to not go down. And after that moment, he had his way. But for the first time, at least in my viewing of him, we saw some vulnerabilities in terms of maybe this guy is not the impenetrable force that he looked like up to this point in his career.
Hey, it's fighting. Things happen. You're going to get hit. And in Collazo's case, he was something like a 30-1 favorite in that fight. Some crazy betting line, just nuts. Things happen, and he had to survive a little bit of a scare during that card. He won a very wide decision over his opponent, Gerardo Zapata, who's a Nicaraguan, who acquitted himself well, actually, despite the fact that the odds were so wide and the scorecards were so wide. I mean, two of the scorecards were 119, 109, and the third was 117, 110. But, sometimes you're going to get caught. right? And Zapata caught Collazo expecting a body shot, right? He was thinking he was going to go down to the body, and he dipped his head a little bit, and instead Zapata raised the shot just a touch, and man, he popped him with a vicious right hook that he did not see coming. Those are the punches that really get you. And he staggered Collazo. How he avoided hitting the canvas or even touching it with his glove, I'm not sure. He wheeled all over that ring. He was stumbling. He was really off balance, but it wasn't a knockout. Here's the problem with that. Because it wasn't a knockout, he didn't pause to take a referee count. So imagine being hit hard enough to be knocked down and getting no breather, none. He had to get through the whole rest of the round after having been rattled. He avoided taking any other harder shots that round. He did the right thing. He held when he needed to. He backed up when he needed to. He got himself over to that corner. He got a butt kicking from his trainer, and then he carried on. He did just fine. He just needed that round to collect himself. He's a real fine little fighter. He admitted later he hit me with a good shot. It landed well, but he also said, hey, I reacted good. And he was smart. He changed the plan, especially for those next few rounds, to boxing. And he said, we boxed intelligently, like the strategy we had to use, and we got the outcome. And he did. He got into a real solid rhythm. He did not make the same mistake twice at all. He has great footwork. He has great accuracy. He's able to move in, land his shots, back out of danger. He has a great fiery jab. He used that a lot. And Zapata just simply doesn't have the experience or skills to get around that kind of quality. So he was frustrated. And he kind of just sort of threw his hands up, not literally, but just like, whatever. He fell way behind. He kind of gave up in a lot of ways. In fact, his trainer, his corner, told him after the 9th round, you need to get after it. We're way behind. And it just didn't do much. I am also thinking to myself that maybe just the tiniest bit, the fact that Oscar Collazo was fighting with Miguel Cotto and Ivan Calderon watching from the audience, maybe he either felt a little bit of nerves because this was the official Hall of Fame weekend induction card at Turning Stone in Verona, New York. Maybe he felt a little bit of nerves, or he was working too hard to impress those guys. Either way, he steadied the ship when he needed to. He got the job done. Those are great learning experiences. But boy, at 105 pounds, he is really starting to run out of daylight a little bit in that division. And he admitted it. He, was talking about moving up to 108, where he might find some, more visible opponents. But boy, if you think it's hard for the guys at flyweight and superfly to get attention, the Bam Rodriguez's and the Chocolatitos and the Stratas of the world, Collazo has a really big hill to climb, and it's tough to get that kind of attention here. He's done a really good job, given that he's fighting at 105 pounds. He's Puerto Rican. Bravo to him. He got himself, some pretty good visibility out of this card, and he's sellable. He's bilingual. He's got a great personality. He's fun to watch.
Excuse me. Indeed, he is. Future. I can understand him wanting to move up to try to get some greater visibility with the news of Kenshiro Teraji vacating unified 108-pound champion Kenshiro Teraji, moving up to 112. There's a open spot for him to get some fights. Maybe he could move up and fight IBF champion Sivanati Noshinga, who just regained the title earlier this year. But there's a fighter in his division at strawweight, Jinjiro Shigeoka, who is IBF champion at 105. I would like to see Golden Boy try to make a unification match between Shigeoka and Collazo. It will be one of the better fights in the sport that people. Yeah, it will be one of the better fights in the sport in terms of style. Both Collazo and Shigeoka very exciting. Both are southpaws. Both can punch. And there's been discussions about them fighting. Um, I would like to see that. I would like to see Golden Boy try to make that fight first. Were it to happen, more than likely is going to be in Japan. So Collazo would have to sacrifice and travel to make it happen. Before, so for me, I want to see Shigeoka before him entertaining the possibility of moving up to 108. They can't make that fight, fair enough. But for me, I want to see unification with him, Collazo, and Shigeoka at 105 pounds. Move on to some other fights here. The big card over at Madison Square Garden, centered around Puerto Rican Day Parade. The main event was Xander Zayas versus Patrick Teixeira. We'll talk about that in a few. But on the undercard, one of the more impressive up and coming fighters on the boxing scene is Bruce Shushu Carrington, fast rising featherweight. He fought late replacement Brayan Gracia, and Gracia gave Shushu some problems early in the round. He was competitive, but you could just tell that over time, once Shushu began to figure things out, he would start to take control, and he did that slowly but surely. He began to pour on the punches and punish Gracia. Ultimately, stopped him. Here's the question for me, Gail. Shushu is 27, so they're gonna have to move him up relatively quickly. How far do you think he is from a title shot? I think that right now, based on what I've seen of him, given the fact that the featherweight division is not that strong, right? Is not that strong, particularly with Navarrete moving up to 130 and subsequently 135. When you look at the champions, whether it's Ray Vargas, who's a bit long in the tooth, he hasn't been impressive in quite a few years at 126. Nick Ball, who just beat Ray Ford. Luis Alberto Lopez, really good fighter, but unknown. Espinoza, who beat Robeisy Ramirez, upset. There's a spot there. I think with Shushu Carrington ranked high by the WBO, I think if Espinoza, who's going to fight later on this month, wins, I would not be surprised if Top Rank would try to make a fight between Carrington and Espinoza towards the end of the year.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised by that either. You know, they were so shocked when he beat Ramirez, right? And I think they would love the two unbeaten records going after each other. Espinoza is not a youngster either. He's 30. In fact, there are very few young names right up at the top. You've got this sort of slew of this quartet of aging British featherweights, right? It's the Lee Woods, it's the Josh Warringtons, etc. You know, you even have guys like, you know, floating around out there who are past their best, who might be a good next step for him. You know, I think of somebody like Isaac Dogbe, who Top Rank has, you know, always liked. And then you have the guys who are, you know, on the rise. And to me, you know, the guys that are interesting, somebody maybe like Brandon Figueroa eventually, Angelo Leo.
Or Stephen Fulton.
Fulton, well, yeah, because Leo comes to mind because he's been fighting on Pro Box cards and just ripping it up. His only loss was to Fulton, and no shame in that. He's 30. He needs to get a move on. You also have another guy with just one loss, besides Angelo, and that's Ruben Villa, but could make an interesting fight. And most of these guys are available is the nice thing. I think Luis Alberto Lopez might be a step too far at this point. I don't think they want to cannibalize the roster and put him up against Robeisy Ramirez just yet. I do think Ray Vargas could be a likely target. Very possible. Ray is, I think, also getting to the point where maybe he's past his best. He's 33. So there aren't any real young, fresh faces. Probably the most interesting sort of new guy on the scene is Nick Ball, who's the same age as Carrington. So it's interesting. There aren't any 22, 3, 5-year-old top featherweights other than Raymond Ford, who's moving up a division. He's not going to stick around at featherweight. So there are a lot of very interesting matchups that are available now at featherweight. Of course, the one everyone wants to talk about is probably a couple of years down the road.
Absolutely. I know was the talk during the fight of Carrington and Inoue. I'm not entertaining that. One, Inoue is at 122. Why would he contemplate fighting a Carrington who hasn't even won a title yet at 126? For those who do not know, Inoue is in the United States, where he received the Sugar Ray Robinson Award as Fighter of the Year, 2023 Fighter of the Year for the Boxing Writers Association. He was at this card on ESPN, talked about what could be upcoming for him afterwards. So we'll talk about in the future. We'll talk about that in a few during the news segment. Inoue watched Carrington. They both kind of gave an acknowledgement of each other before Inoue stepped out the building. He was popular. Pictures of him all over the place on fight night with multiple dignitaries in the sport. So for those who thinks that implies that Inoue is not mainstream and he needs to quote unquote fight in the United States, Sean Porter, were there plenty of American fight fans who knew him that night in New York, in New York City, the quote unquote Mecca, right? So that's going on my little tangent here. But in terms of Carrington, get him a title shot first before we think of him entertain a fight with him in a way. Main event of this was Xander Zayas fighting Patrick Teixeira. Zayas, Gail talked about he was going to stop this guy in 6. He got the decision, had control of the fight for the most part, but something was missing for me. There were moments where he let, I don't know if his inexperience showed. Patrick Teixeira is a cagey little guy, and for the most part, he was in survival mode. Special fighters or elite fighters or emerging elite fighters find a way to do more damage to a fighter like Teixeira, if not stop him. The fact that we did not see that from Zayas is this cause for concern. I named this particular episode is essentially is Zayas ready for the best at 154? Please answer that question as you give your breakdown of this fight.
Zayas was fighting in his very first 10-round fight, and he passed the test. He outlanded Teixeira in every single round. He was also fighting his first southpaw ever. Teixeira is a veteran. He passed his best, no doubt. They wouldn't have put a 21-year-old in with a veteran at, during Teixeira's best days. But he's crafty. He knows how to survive. He knows how to hang in there. He knows what to do to avoid serious punishment. He's still very mobile. He still knows how to capitalize on mistakes, and he still has a dangerous left hook. What I will say that went very unacknowledged, although in my article for nyfights.com, I did acknowledge this. Zayas showed some pretty good defensive skills. He did avoid any attempt to nail him with the left hook. The only good round Teixeira had was the 6th round. But, Teixeira kind of, used up the last of the fuel he had there, thinking maybe he'd get lucky. And in the last portion of the fight, Teixeira was just slowing down. He's out of fuel. Zayas did press a little more in those last few rounds. I think he was probably looking for the opportunity of a stoppage, but he wasn't going to put himself at risk at that point when the fight was clearly in hand. And I get it. Everybody wants to see flashy, big knockout endings, the young guy on the rise. But first and foremost, Zayas needed to win, and he did. And he dominated the fight. The cards were almost a complete shutout. 190 on 2 cards, 99-91 on the 3rd. And that's because the judge did give Teixeira that 6th round, but only one of them was impressed enough to give him that. And everybody's now wringing their hands over, oh my God, oh no, it was a terrible fight. Oh, for God's sakes, pump the brakes, everybody. Pump the brakes. I get it, because Zayas has stayed busy, and he started so young. He's had 19 fights, but he's 21 years old, and is a very rare 21-year-old who's able to be destructive, explosive at this level. He's working his way up. Top Rank is, got decades of expertise moving guys up. Now, eventually we're going to find where Zayas' ceiling is, but he's got time, and there's not a huge need to rush him. He is a very, very big super welterweight also. I mean, if you look at him, his wingspan across the back, he is big. He'll easily make it up to middleweight, and he'll probably make it up to super middleweight, and from there we'll see. He's got the frame to do it, but he's too young to be that big right now. So, I get it. He's a little bit on cruise control, but Zayas doesn't have a lot of natural explosive power. He is a boxer. Puncher, and a puncher is really barely there, right? And that's how he's going to do it. The good news is he's very charismatic. He's a terrific interview. He's got the Puerto Rican fan base, which is very important on the East Coast, all the way from New York to Florida. So he's still got a place, and he looked like he had a damn good time yesterday at the Puerto Rican Day Parade in New York. Good for him. So I think everybody just needs, as Taylor Swift would say, you need to calm down, everybody, and give the kid a little bit more time. Now, if he was, say, Bruce Carrington's age, 27, yeah, then we might be a little more nervous about things. But no, let him develop. Give him a few more fights. Hey, if he is willing to keep in the ring, stay busy, he has had a few little nagging injury issues and postponements along the way too. So there needs to be some care taken that there isn't too much wear on him before he faces some stiffer opposition. But I'm perfectly okay with this kind of fight, even if it didn't deliver tremendously explosive fireworks. I get it. Everybody's very eager to see him succeed and pull in that fan base. But I'll tell you, between he and Collazo, and Amanda Serrano, they're doing it.
Yeah, maybe a little bit, maybe folks, myself included, are being a little bit too critical. To your point, he is young, and he is still developing. It's just that those at Top Rank and ESPN are hyping him up as the next star. Um, he did get a decent test. Um, he's on the right path. We'll see how far he develops, and will he get to the point where he'll be able to fight and defeat the very best at 154 pounds. Let's move on to news here, Gail. And we talked about Carrington and I'll talk about Inoue. Again, I think that's just a little bit ridiculous at this point. I think something that people missed was because I didn't hear much coverage of it. I wrote about it for Three Kings Boxing. Please check out Three Kings Boxing, your source for pure unadulterated boxing information. Shout out to the Three Kings Boxing staff and crew, 2K, AK Project Boxing Talk, the man behind Three Kings. I'm a senior writer there. Bo, who you've heard on this show numerous times in the past. He's also a senior writer and head of media relations. Shout out to Bakari, senior writer. Shout out to Jay, Corey, Lord Zoe, all the contributors behind the scenes. Red, who does a lot of the editing when it comes to the site and whatnot. But anyway, I wrote about an interview that Inoue conducted with ESPN, and it was talking about his future and whatnot. And they asked the monster about the possibility of a fight with countryman and reigning WBC champion at 118 pounds, Junto Nakatani. Nakatani has a fight coming up next month in Japan. That's going to be on ESPN Plus, by the way. Um, the fact that Inoue, and they asked about Nakatani, and Inoue said that, yeah, he's interested and he looks forward, in his words, try to quote him as best as I can here, he looks forward to a fight with Nakatani. The fact that Inoue said that he was interested in the fight and looks forward to a fight with him, for me, that should have folks excited, right? Nakatani is one of the best fighters in the low weight division, three division champion, coming off of where, in a way, the trail that Inoue has left, particularly at 118 pounds, Nakatani is starting to fulfill that, right. Um, Dominant win over Astro Balo earlier this year to win the vacant WBC belt at 118 pounds. His trainer, Rudy Hernandez, has been on record saying they are nipping at Inoue's heels. Were that fight to get made, I think is arguably the biggest fight in the history of Japanese boxing. Two elite fighters, Inoue, to a lot of folks, is the best pound for pound fighter in the world. But in my humble opinion, if there's anybody out there from 118 to 126 who has a chance of beating him, it's one Junto Nakatani. More people should be talking about the fact of hyping up this potential matchup, and there should be a bigger reaction to, in a way, mentioning Nakatani's name. I do understand, but I'm frustrated why this is not getting more coverage.
Well, part of the reason is because we do focus, for the most part, in North America. We both have our butts firmly planted in North America, in Western Hemisphere, or Northern Hemisphere. Here is very hard, other than someone like Inoue, to see fights from Japan live or even be able to access them easily unless you know what you're looking for. And most people aren't as hardcore as we are, both about the lower weight divisions and seeing foreign champions. So, for even a relatively interested boxing fan, I mean, if you're talking about fans where I am on the West Coast, which has a pretty solid fan base oriented mainly toward Mexican and Latin American fighters for the most part, Californians, you know, That's a 3 a.m. fight, mostly on a weekday. People got to get off their butts and go to work. So it's a big ask. Honestly, we can't beat people up that say, I'm not going to get up 5 hours before I need to be at work on a Tuesday to watch
Well, I'm
this.
talking hardcore heads, though. I'm not talking casuals or mainstream. I'm
Big
talking
deal.
hardcore heads who love to talk about how much they know. And
Hardcore
no,
talking about it. I'm not quite sure what we're saying here. And the fact is, they're still, they're campaigning two divisions apart, a division apart at this point. It seems to me it would be a hell of a lot smarter for Nakatani to continue trying to unify at bantamweight and get those belts. Once he's done his business, then move up. It's a little bit like getting too excited too quickly about Bruce Carrington. Neither of these fights are around the corner. I get it that the problem is finding opposition for Inoue at this point. I mean, he runs through all the top names so fast, and then he's sort of standing there, and we're all saying, well, what's next? And so is he. He's really looking for some kind of challenge out there, which is why he has talked about moving up, but also has said very, very clearly that even though he's now unified and he could move up now, he's going to stick around at 122 for a little while longer. And that's smart because, unlike a Manny Pacquiao, he's got a ceiling for how far he can move up. I mean, he's never making welterweight or 154 like Pacquiao did. No way in hell. And he's probably not going to make 140 either. And his speed and his power, have a darn good chance of being diminished the further up the ladder he goes. So far, hasn't been a problem. But, it's fun to talk about. It's great. Yeah, that fight should be fun down the road. But think about some of these other fights that have taken 2, 3, 5 years to finally get two guys in the ring. And they do. I think we're a good couple of years away, and we'll get there. So while it's an interesting discussion, again, I don't think we need to get too wound up talking about it when there are so many other things to turn our attention to that are happening right now.
well, I am. I'm going to get excited. And for the record, Nakatani has said that he wants to uh, unify at 118 pounds, and that is doable because
Yeah.
all the champions at 118 pounds are from Japan. Um, so it could happen. He could fight Naoya's younger brother, Takuma, who's WBA champion. The other two champions are also from Japan. So he has said that he wants to engage in a unification bout before moving up to 122. But Inoue has, for the most part, cleaned out most of the division. There's only a couple guys on my radar who I think could give him some real comp. One mainly being Akmadaliev, the former unified champion at 122 pounds. Excuse me. So, but get outside of that, there's not much there for him in that division. And yeah, I just can't help but get excited about the prospect of a fight between Nakatani and the monster. Sure, there's more work to be done, but if it happens, put it this way. I think the way that both fighters are moving, they're destined to fight each other. Not a question of if, it's when.
I agree with that, but it's not going to happen tomorrow, and I don't think it's even going to happen next year, really. I do think that we have potential for a real interesting narrative if Nakatani fights Takuma Inoue. It should Takuma lose, you have a little bit of a revenge theme that could, emerge from that. Wouldn't it be interesting? Weirder things have happened. He fights Takuma and Takuma wins. And then we got a Klitschko situation, right? With the two brothers. I think just like the Klitschkos, the Inoues will absolutely not fight each other.
So indeed, can at least tease. Hope springs eternal, and we'll see what both fighters.
Well, the bottom line is we need to start some kind of GoFundMe, and for God's sakes, we need to send you to Japan to see some boxing. Let's get that.
Absolutely.
There's a sponsor out there. We got to get Michael to Japan. I mean,
absolutely.
He needs to bucket list.
Brian Garcia is living high off the hog of his win over Devin Haney on April 20th. It seems since that fight, he's been living in the fast lane, but not always in a positive manner. Over the weekend, TMZ reported that Garcia was arrested for vandalism out in California in Beverly Hills. They report that he may have been intoxicated. Given the news, Garcia is still dealing with the positive drug test in the aftermath of this fight with Haney. He's been all over social media, visibly drinking. He's been doing more posting on social media than he has in the gym. He's been to Brazil. He's been to that place. He's been to this concert. He's been with this artist, that artist, quote unquote, performing. To a lot of folks, there's a downward spiral when it comes to Garcia. He's kind of lost control. I think that he's dealing with some personal issues when it comes to his mother as well. There are some concerns for one Ryan Garcia.
Yeah. People around Ryan seem concerned, and it seems to me they should be concerned. It is such a shame that our sport, which doesn't get the kind of mainstream sports coverage it used to, for those who still read newspapers, whether they're reading the Dead Tree version or the online version, major newspapers still have a big audience in this country, but very few write about boxing anymore. But yet in my Los Angeles Times this morning, what's the major headline? Ryan Garcia arrested. That's the way the sport of boxing gets its visibility in front of the public. That's just stake through the heart of our sport. What a shame. Ryan has nobody around him to apparently keep him under control, hold the other end of the leash, tell him the hard truths he needs to hear. Maybe there have been people who've tried and he just pushes them aside. He appears to me more like an out-of-control lead singer of a hot band than a professional athlete. And he's a young guy with a whole lot of money and a whole lot of time and a whole lot of addictions and a whole lot of demons. And that is just a toxic, toxic cocktail. The problem also, we all need to look in the mirror ourselves. Anybody who spends any time on boxing, Twitter, X, whatever you want to call it, or Instagram in particular, both platforms, Ryan pops up with these live streams and spaces, and he has conversations with people. He spouts his wild conspiracy theories and talks about pedophiles and spaceships and God knows what else. And I get it. It's the train wreck you can't turn your eyes away from. And everybody's, what's he going to say next? And so Ryan knows the minute he announces he's doing something live, suddenly he's got attention and an audience around him and people. And he seems to crave that almost as much as any drug there is. But we need to stop enabling him. And you, the fans, need to stop walking on, and stop interacting, and stop it. We need to dry up that supply. That's what he's manically doing, running all over the world and He's famous enough and well connected enough that people put him on stage, and it's because we all will look up at him. That needs to stop. Let's hope this latest episode, for which he was taken to a hospital, gets him into some kind of serious rehab. He needs to step back for a while, out of the spotlight, address his issues. He's done it before, but at a certain point, he's a messed up guy with a lot of money. And we've seen a lot of guys just, put a match to their careers, and mental health issues only explain it so far. So I hope people get a handle on it. It does sound like the fact he was picked up and arrested was because there were people asking for welfare checks on him and knew he was, at the upper end of this out of control behavior the last few weeks. So that at least gives me a tiny bit of hope that, somebody's going to get a handle on this. But please, everybody, we need to leave Ryan be and stop fueling any of this, whether unintentional or not. That's why I'm bringing it up. Think about your role in this and back off.
I have no more to add to that, so we move on to preview some fights that's happening this weekend. In the UK, Chris Billam-Smith won the WBO cruiserweight belt earlier this year, defeating Lawrence Okolie. Makes the first defense of that belt, I believe, in a rematch against Richard Riakporhe. They fought a few years back with Riakporhe winning by decision. Very good fight that first fight was. Could have went either way. Riakporhe just did enough in the end. I think we could see the same level of excitement in the rematch. Billam-Smith is there to be hit, but he's very sturdy and he's very strong physically, and he has power. Riakporhe is not a defensive wizard himself. I can't call the winner here. I could see a scenario where Smith, the fact that he won the belt, he's a world champion now, has a greater level of confidence. That may pull him over the top, or it could be a factor that Riakporhe maybe just has his just is the better fighter regardless. I don't know, but at the very least, I'm going to watch the fight just for the exciting factor, because I think this is going to be another good one.
I'll tell you what, people sometimes, criticize or denigrate the cruiserweight division. Cruiserweight division is very interesting and very exciting right now. We've had some great matchups. I think this one will be very action-packed. These guys have a bit of a score to settle, and now there's a belt between them that makes it very interesting. But that first fight between Billam-Smith and Riakporhe, I knew it was a couple of years ago. It was 5 years ago. 5 years ago. That's an eternity, right? In boxing. Billam-Smith's had 10 fights since then. Riakporhe, I think, has had 15 fights since then, quite a few. So there's going to be some familiarity between them, but boy, there's a lot of water under the bridge, a lot of experience for both of them. So I've listened to people talking about the fight. This is one of those domestic fights that fans in the UK just really get pumped for, just like the Taylor Carrington fight here a few weeks ago. This has also got sort of a feeding frenzy. It's taking place in a Premier League soccer arena. It's the Crystal Palace team's arena. That's Billam-Smith's home team, and he's very excited about this. They're going to fill it, so good for them. But I think that when you win that belt, there is a belief in boxing lore that once you are a champion, you fight 10% better. You hear that. I've heard that for years. That that the belt gives you wings. And I do believe that that verification of your skills, that endorsement, if you will, third party endorsement, does give you a huge boost of confidence. And I think that's that extra percentage that people perceive in performance that takes place. The fight was really close the first time. Billam-Smith worked hard to get that belt. I don't think he wants to give it up. And I think he'll get the win this time. And if he does, I think we have a trilogy in store, which would be fun, especially if the fight is close. So I'm hoping for a really exciting contest either way it goes. But yeah, if you force me to make a choice, I'm going to give it just the slightest edge to Billam-Smith. And by the way, American fans can watch this card. This is one of those boxer promotions cards out of the UK that are being broadcast in the US on Peacock, which has got increasingly really nice stable of sports content, especially as we go into the Paris Olympics. Peacock is NBC's streaming platform. And, it's among the cheaper subscriptions, especially for boxing. If you like a good British boxing card, Peacock is definitely worth a few bucks out of your pocket. I think the ad-supported version is like $5.99, or it's compared to some of the others, it's real cheap. So I think that's a good bang for your buck.
And that fight will occur on June 15th, in London. Also on the 15th, in Puerto Rico on the Zone. First title defense for Subriel Matias. Won the belt. What was it, late last year? By knockout. Matias is known for his knockouts. All 20 of his wins have come by way of KO. Fighting Liam Paro of Australia. I think Paro is a solid guy, a decent boxer. The question is, Gail, traveling to Matias's home country, does he have enough to outbox and hold off the power punching Matias?
Well, we are going to find out. This card is really under the radar, mainly because for American fans, the big card is the one in Las Vegas. For those who like to watch their boxing earlier in the day, maybe that boxer card's going to draw your attention. But don't take your eye off this one, because both these guys only know one direction, and that's forward, right? Neither of them know how to back up. Neither of them have a brake pedal. It should be a crazy action fight for as long as it lasts. Although Matias has just this, sort of anxiety-producing habit of the first few rounds. He just kind of just circles. I'm not sure how to describe it. He seems to be getting a keen assessment of his opponent, and then suddenly he just unloads, which is just nuts. But you're convinced for the first couple of rounds, every time you see him do it, oh no, he can't pull the trigger. Oh, he hasn't got it. He overtrained, or something's wrong with him. Nah, it's just how he is. It takes him a while to get down to business. Paro, he's a road warrior. He's Australian. He's from Brisbane. That is just like the other side of the planet, right? So once he got past, his development fights and got past being a prospect, he has had to fight on the road. So yeah, Puerto Rico is a little farther than he normally goes, but he has fought in Tampa before, Florida. So it's not going to be completely unfamiliar to him. And hey, that's just, in his position, that's what it takes. I watched Paro on the Haney Prograis undercard just absolutely have his way with Montana Love. Just destroyed him. He had him down twice in the 6th round before finally referee Thomas Taylor just had to call it. I mean, he was just beating the crap out of Montana Love. So that was a tremendous performance that everyone knew was teeing up this fight in the months ahead. And by God, it actually happened and it actually got made, because a lot of guys are not real keen to get in the ring in front of Matias. But luckily, we've got Paro, we've got Matias. It's going to be, I think, a very entertaining fight. So, if you are watching the other card, the big card, dedicate a second screen to this one, or at least if you're a DAZN subscriber, go back at some point. Maybe you watch this fight on Sunday. I know I'll have 2 screens going for sure.
Absolutely. Again, that Matias and Paro is going to happen June 15th in Puerto Rico on DAZN. The big card this weekend centers around the return of Tank Davis, as he's going to fight Frank Martin. But on the undercard of that fight, David Benavidez. We all know his pursuit to try to get Canelo Alvarez in the ring. I'm on it about Canelo needing to fight this dude and why he doesn't do it. I just do not know. But Benavidez is not going to wait on Canelo to make up his mind. He's moving up to 175, probably for this one fight, but still, he's moving up to fight former champion Oleksandr Gvozdyk for the vacant interim belt WBC version at 175. Here's the thing. Size matter, but sometimes so does youth. Gvozdyk made his return to the ring after, 3-4 year layoff, has looked good in his return to the ring. But I think, Gail, that Benavidez is another level in terms of a fighter. Benavidez is not your average super middleweight. We all know his story back when he was a hefty kid, was a heavyweight. He's moved down in weight, so he can make 168, but he's probably more of a 175 pounder to begin with. I think so. He has the size, he has the skill, he has the work rate, and up against 37, 38-year-old Gvozdyk. I don't know if an Oleksandr Gvozdyk at this stage of his career, at this age, can keep up with the younger, fresher, strong, hungry David Benavidez.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. It's a great step-up fight into the new division for David. I think this was such a smart thing to do. Give himself a little test, something to get those competitive juices flowing, because, he pretty much has had, his way the last few fights. He's feeling himself. So I like this. And I've always liked Oleksandr Gvozdyk, especially when he and his Ukrainian brothers, Usyk and Lomachenko, were all training here in California together. But he took a terrible, terrible beating at the hands of Artur Beterbiev. I mean, that was a difficult loss. He was undefeated at that point, and he was down 3 times in the 10th round before the fight was stopped. It was just a bad beating. And he decided to retire. He was very serious about it. I'm retiring. He went back to Ukraine. He wanted to go back home. I'm trying to remember, his intention at the time was to get some kind of advanced degree. I want to say he was going to either go to law school or business school, but something drew him back. And I'd love to know the exact story of what it was. And perhaps it was the idea that he could represent Ukraine during this very difficult time for his country by being visible on a big stage, which is very much what all the Ukrainian fighters feel a responsibility to do, is be out there, keep the country uppermost in people's minds, give their own countrymen and women something to enjoy, to cheer about in dark times. And, maybe there was something of that. So he's carefully come back. He had a 6-round fight at the beginning of last year, very under the radar, on a club show in Pomona, California, which is hilarious. Nobody knew he was doing it. And then he was on the Canelo Ryder undercard. I take that back. He was on another undercard in, it was, I was right the first time. He was on the Canelo Ryder undercard. He was like one of the first 2 or 3 before the bell fights. Hardly anybody saw it. He had a very good performance. And then he stepped up a little bit against tougher opposition, but still only in an 8-round fight last September. He won it handily. This is a completely different story on Saturday than what he's been working on the last year. I mean, to say that he has stepped up, it is a quantum leap from what he has been doing in 6 and 8-round fights to have a 12-round fight, his first 12-round fight since late 2019, and it's against David Benavidez. You know, you're right. It's going to be youth over experience. Gvozdyk's definitely talented. You know, he has got that amazing footwork, that, wonderful anticipation of what's going to happen in the ring. I'm not sure the physical skills are going to let him execute what he wants to. He is 37. It's just a big ask. What I do hope is that it's competitive, that it's interesting, that it isn't another demoralizing beatdown for him, because I think there's a place for him. But the Ukrainians, the X factor with them is they really do have something bigger to fight for than themselves. You know, wouldn't it be a hell of a thing if he pulls, a performance like Dennis Baranchik did here a few weeks ago in San Diego, and Gvozdyk was there behind the corner along with Sergei Derevinchenko, Sergei Bocek, all going nuts. In fact, Usyk's watching from Riyadh along with Loma. They will all be there with him, if not, spiritually, if not physically. So, I think it might be a little more interesting fight. But for God's sakes, who in the world would pick against David Benavidez? No one.
Yeah, at this point, no, not 168, 68 or 75. Maybe with the exception of Morel or Canelo. We will see how he does against the experience of Gvozdyk. Last fight, of course, is the biggest fight of the week, and that is the return of Gervonta Davis or Abdul Wahid, aka Abdul Wahid, fighting Frank Martin. Tank defending his belt at 135 pounds, WBA version. A lot of people make Davis the overwhelming favorite, but in my mind, Gail, I think Martin, solid guy, good southpaw, good skills, power. I think he's going to give Tank a better fight than many people anticipate. On balance, Martin is probably the better technical fighter, but it's just the power and the explosiveness of Davis. That's the thing. Excuse me. That separates the two. I want to see Davis. I want to see Martin's approach to this fight. Will he try to box? Will he try to take the fight to Davis? If he does, it has a chance to be exciting. If he doesn't, it could be kind of boring. Interesting fight. I'm going to make Tank Davis the favorite, but not overwhelmingly. I think Frank Martin has a legit shot here.
I do too. I had a very interesting conversation with him at the news conference announcing this card. And every interview I have seen since is very much giving me the same impression I got here. What was that? 2 months ago. He is dialed in. He is focused. He's got the tools to make this very competitive. Can't make a mistake. That's always the issue with Tank, because he does have that explosive power out of nowhere, and he has surprised a lot of good fighters and caught them sleeping. Just the littlest bit is all it takes. but it's the focus. It's his, he's dead serious about getting this opportunity and making the most of it. And I do think it will be competitive. And similar to Benavidez and Gvozdyk, it is very tough to pick against Tank Davis, but Frank Martin will be far more competitive against Davis than Gvozdyk against Benavidez. He could put a scare into Tank, which I don't think would be the worst thing for him. Some of these guys are, winning fights so handily. I think that there is a danger of them getting complacent. So a little bit of a scare might just get Tank's blood going in all the right ways. And I think we're going to be treated to not just a great main event. I think this is going to be a very underrated card. And I think as the week goes by, people are going to start getting a little more excited about it. I hope the media outreach and appearances reminds people, what we've got here. It is coming in the middle of several pay-per-views already this year and in the last month. And if you add in UFC, it's a lot for people. That's my main concern about getting enough eyes on this fight. We'll see what happens, but it should be very competitive. And I think to the point of, if Tank decides he wants to play it safe and box, he can do that. I don't think people are going to love that, but he might need to do what a guy's got to do to maintain that undefeated record.
And that fight is going to be held, Davis and Martin, as well as Benavidez and Gvozdyk. It's going to be held in Las Vegas on Amazon Prime. And I think we're going to end things on that note. For those who want to talk all things boxing with you, Gail, let the folks know where they can hit you up on these social media streets.
I will. A reminder that in addition to Amazon Prime, you have the opportunity to buy it from ppv.com, which gives you a nice commentary team, features, and chat ability. So there's that option too. And on the undercard, we'll just remind you, you get to see Gary Antoine Russell, who tends to be like his brother and fights once a year. But we have a fight of two undefeated guys, and Gary Antoine Russell and Alberto Pulo, and that could be quite the barn burner. You also have Carlos Adames and Terrell Gaucher. Again, I think that might be.
Oh, yeah. Was the middleweight title be on the line in that fight?
WBC World Middleweight title is on the line there. We need some more excitement in the middleweight division. That's all good. That Adames has finally got that belt and finally gets to fight for real. Roman Villa is on this card. And the snake bit Elijah Garcia, who is a very exciting rising middleweight talent, still a prospect, even though he's got 16 fights, is going to fight Kyron Davis. And that fight has been put off by injuries and mishaps and this and that. And for everybody who heard the beginning of the show and the concerns about the 21-year-old Xander Zayas, here's 21-year-old Elijah Garcia just pounding the you-know-what out of guys, knocking them out of 16 fights, 13 knockouts. He is a power puncher and very fun to watch. And that is on the Before the Bell non-pay-per-view portion. So I highly recommend checking that out, whether you buy the pay-per-view or not.
And again, for those who want to talk all things boxing with you, Gail?
At nyfights.com. I was more excited about making sure you knew all this weekend. Y'all know where to find me. Come on.
You can also check around these social media streets at PR Pro San Diego on Twitter and I believe IG. For those, Daniel wasn't here with us this evening, but for those who want to talk boxing, pro wrestling, and the NBA, especially when it comes to the Miami Heat, Daniel from For Boxing News and the Inscriber. You can do so on social media at RAWCUZ Raucus99 on Twitter, because I refuse to call it X, as well as IG. For those who want to talk boxing, music, fitness with me on Twitter, you know what it is, Brother JR 76. For those who want to talk boxing, music, fitness, and colognes, fragrance on IG and TikTok, you can do so, Brother JRSC on IG and TikTok. On the next episode, we would have a recap of the Las Vegas card between Davis and Martin, as well as recaps of Benavidez, Gvozdyk, Antoine Russell fighting Alberto Puello. Carlos Adames making the first defense of the WBC middleweight belt against Terrell Couche. We will also have a recap of the rematch between Billam-Smith and Riakporhe. This time, Smith defending the WBO cruiserweight belt against Riakporhe, as well as a recap of the fight between Subriel and Matias, making the first defense of the IBF junior welterweight belt against Liam Paro. That fight is going to take place in London. And we will have a preview of Rafael Espinosa, who scored one of the upsets of the year when he defeated Robeisy Ramirez to win the WBO featherweight belt. Espinosa makes the first defense to that WBO featherweight belt against a guy by the name of Sergio Torino. Keep an eye on that first, because as we mentioned in talking Shushu Carrington, is my belief. I think it's a strong likelihood that if Espinosa should win, he could possibly fight Shushu Carrington at the end of the year. Again, I want to thank for those who are checking us out on YouTube. Please make sure you hit that like button. Please make sure you hit that subscribe button for all notifications and future news or future happenings regarding Pound for Pound Boxing Report. For Gale of NY Fights, I'm your host, Michael. This has been episode 448 of the Pound for Pound Boxing Report. We will see you guys next time. Everyone have a good evening. Good night.